Okay, so I left you after the last video. I had just finished bagging the center sponson, so you can see that there still. And then I went straight to getting some 19-ounce triax in the outer sponsons. So I did end up going in and cleaning up a little bit more of the white gel coat that was in there. Still didn't get all of it, but got more of it than in the very first video that I put out. So you can see I just wet the glass out on that table and then jumped in the boat, put a little bit of resin on the sponson itself, and then rolled out the fiberglass and then worked all the air out of it with just a finned aluminum roller. And then here we are, the last little piece is going to go in at the back. So I'll get that all in there. And then eventually I put you'll see me put some peel ply in. So peel ply is great, especially with the epoxy. So you don't have to sand the amine blush off every time you want to add something to it. The peel ply is a little bit more annoying to install than, like, say, the glass. It doesn't really form and lay out as well as glass does. But for what I'm using it for, this is fine. So this is just me wetting out some 19-ounce triax. You can see I'm kind of like fighting the resin through the glass. It's really not necessary. Just be a little bit more patient than I was, and then you can scrape the excess epoxy off and back into your cup before you roll the fabric up. Okay, so not a whole lot to report, but almost all the cores in, minus the gaps where I had to stop the bag to. So I'm about to climb underneath the bow and I'm just going to sand off the high spots, clean it up a tiny little bit, and get it ready to ferret. So we'll throw a little bit Cabosil mix together and fill in the lows and radius and fillet the sharp 90s, and then we'll come in right behind it, throw some 19-ounce triax on top, and start working our way to the back. I'll fill in the gap of core as I get back to it. That'll just get filled in and covered with glass at the same time. I'm not going to bag those little sections down. So here we are, we're just putting some 12-ounce biax on tops of the sponsons. So just wetting out the balsa, wetting out the fabric, laying it out, rolling all the air out of it, and carrying on from there. So you'll see that I've got a blur going on in a couple spots on these videos. Just personal information that doesn't need to be broadcasted out on the internet for all the weirdos and creeps. So at the back of the boat I put 2 layers of 12-ounce down right away. I didn't put 2 layers down in the center part of the boat there because that'll get taken care of when I put the floor down and tab the floor in. It'll get the extra layer of 12-ounce to give me the desired glass thickness that I'm after. And then we put a bunch of peel ply down just to make working on the boat later, like putting the floor in, a little bit easier. Less sanding to do, better adhesion. I didn't put peel ply at the back of the boat. I should have. I'm going to have to go in and do a bit of grinding before I put the fuel tank mounts, battery mount, oil pump or oil tank mount, and trim pump mounts in there. Not the end of the world, but should have thought about that when I was back there. Okay, so getting ready to put the transom back in the boat. So like I said, here's the piece of Coosa, 1.5-inch Coosa for the transom. I still have to go drill a bunch of holes in it. The inside's going to get a layer of 19-ounce triax, then it'll get dropped in, and then it's going to get tabbed in all the way around it, front and back, with 4-inch tape, or maybe it's 6-inch tape and 12-inch tape. This is 17-ounce. So that's all pre-cut here. And then my knees are going to get dropped in. So this is how I'm going to save weight on this boat. This knee is just Nidacore. So it's basically just a form to hold the fiberglass. So I dropped the transom in the boat and then used some popsicle sticks and a hot glue gun to make a quick template. This took like 3 minutes and it was perfect once I traced it to the Nidacore. And then we sat there and cut out all these pieces to tab the knees in the exact same fashion, a layer of narrow tape followed by a layer of wide tape around the entire thing. So hopefully we can find time to do that in the next couple of days. So same thing for this boat. The entire floor is going to be Nidacore. All the bulkheads are going to be Nidacore. The deck that goes on the top might be Nidacore, or I might get fancy and do some carbon work with a bit of core, like just foam core, some 1/4 inch. Undecided yet. Okay, so here we are. We're just gonna glue the Coosa board in. So I've gone in, drilled a ton of 1/8 inch holes in it, just to let some of the epoxy get the air out of it, basically, when you sandwich it against the transom. So I didn't have any big clamps, and I wasn't gonna make a bunch just for this. So I took some scrap 2x4 and a bunch of stainless steel screws, and I screwed through the transom into the Coosa board to hold it in place. Once it was dry, I took the screws back out. No issues. So here we are, just with some thickened epoxy, filled in the gap on the bottom and then reached into the back and did the same thing. Here we are trying to get a bit of glass in behind the transom. This proved to be far more difficult than I originally anticipated. And here's the top skin, 19-ounce triax. Same as just laminating any other piece of fiberglass. Wet it out, put it down, get the air out of it. You'll see I blurred out my lovely wife. She specifically asked not to be on the internet, so here we are. So we did some 6-inch tape and then some 12-inch tape everywhere. It's all 17-ounce biax, the taping stuff is. And here we are putting the knees in. So I'm using Nidacore for the knees. I know some guys have pretty strong opinions about that. Just think of them as a hollow knee, and the fiberglass is doing all the work. The Coosa board is literally just there to form the fiberglass. So we got both knees in. They both ended up being a little bit splayed outwards, not quite 90 degrees. Yeah, I like to tell you that they aren't 90 degrees for a reason, but they're not. Basically, by the time I realized the first one was a little crooked, it was too late to go in and shove it around. So I just made the second one match. In the end, it's not going to matter. And then here's a couple pictures of the transom after it was done being laid up. Several layers of 18-ounce on top of some 19-ounce triax. Should work. Then here we are. We're going to get into building the first bulkhead. I mentioned using popsicle sticks to make a template before, so that's what's going on here. Not my idea, copied it from somebody else. Seems to be the fastest way that I could think of to make a template that is this oddly shaped. So you'll notice that I left the corners open. That's so that I don't have to drill holes for rigging later. Here I am adding some braces to stiffen it up enough to get it out of the boat. Okay, so what I just did while you watched me, use a hot glue gun and a bunch of popsicle sticks to make this really, for this boat, big and stupidly shaped bulkhead. It's going to go behind the rear seat and kind of block off the passenger compartment from the fuel tank and the battery and some storage, just so we don't have things rolling or sliding back and forth and getting lost in the abyss of the bilge. So I'm going to trace it out just with a Sharpie, and then I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to see if it still fits in the boat. I know this thing came out, but it was a little bit bendy as it came out. I'm hoping I don't have to cut this in half, but if I do, it's not the end of the world. So here, just tracing it out and then cutting it out with an X-Acto knife. Seems to work pretty well. I think if I was going to do these again, I would intentionally cut them a little bit big, then glass them, and then come back and cut them back down to size with just an angle grinder or jigsaw or something like that. But anyway, this worked. So laid some glass out on top, traced it, I had to put some tape around the perimeter just so that it doesn't twist and distort too much. Copied it, flipped it around, did the same thing on the other side. So I have one piece of 12-ounce biax on each side. So not a lot of glass, but for what these bulkheads are doing, this should be plenty. And if it's not, well, you'll get another video of me cutting them out and replacing them. So here we are, we're just making an envelope bag. So instead of glassing it down to the table or to anything else, it's just your standard giant Ziploc bag basically. So laid out some peel ply, some bleeder cloth, and some breather cloth. And here we go. So just put it down, test fitting everything, rolling it back up. Take the tape off the glass, and I just wet it out directly onto the Nidacore bulkhead. I laid it out kind of wet because I didn't pre-wet the Nidacore, which maybe I probably should have done. Picked it all up, flipped it over, did it again. Peel ply and everything, closed the bag up. You'll notice I'm running black bagging tape now. A buddy of mine got this from some people he knows. Seems to work quite well and is cheaper. So these are the two front bulkheads. I built them the same way as the previous bulkhead. Didn't get it on video. So this kind of square looking one that got some glue flanges added after, just so that it was easier to install. I had no way to kind of tab it in after it was installed. Okay, so it's been a while since I took a video. I kept thinking I would take one the next time I worked on it, and I never did. So anyway, we've got the rear bulkhead in, right? So there's a layer, or 3/4 inch Nidacore, a layer of 12-ounce biax on each side, and then it's tabbed in with a layer of 17-ounce biax tape on both sides. And then over here, climb into the boat, go to the front. Same thing, right? Let's see if I can get you a quick view up here. Not really, need more light, but anyway. I've got this knee, or sorry, this bulkhead. Got these two little knees off of it, and then there's a knee going out the front of the boat that is also connected to the deck for about 2 feet. So now I should be able to walk on this deck, and I'm also probably going to cut these side plates off vector style because I don't need them anymore. Gives me more storage. We're getting ready to put the floor in. So here's the floor. The floor is once again 3/4 inch Nidacore. I ended up having to notch the side here to get the floors flat. So we have a layer of 19-ounce triax on each side of the floor. Right, this side was glassed down against the plate with no peel ply. Then I flipped it over, notching 19-ounce, some scrap 12-ounce, just to stiffen up the edges where I cut the top scrim off the Nidacore. So now, throw this on this crappy luggage scale I've got. Oh. But not bad, 9 pounds. For a floor 6 feet long, not quite 2 feet wide. So I've fit the floor. Basically all I'm going to do now is mix up a bunch of glue, adhesive, slather it on here. I'm going to suck the floor in, I'll throw some weight on it, and that'll be it for tonight. So here's just a picture of bagging the floor down right against the glass table. I did the top side, then I flipped the piece over, used a router to notch the sides, and then bagged it down again to do the bottom side. And then this is actually the front section of floor, but same concept, just trimming the edges off of it. Rough trimming with a angle grinder. Makes a big mess. And here we are, putting the floor down. So just more of the same. Just made more adhesive like I have everywhere else. Put a bunch of it down, drop the floor in, and then sort of just finding random stuff around the shop to put a bunch of weight on it. And then went around after and cleaned up the edges. Then this is several days later. You can see I've got the front floor in as well, but we're just tabbing it in. So we're just fairing out the edges with some thicket epoxy, wetting out some glass. This is just more of that 12-ounce biax, like I mentioned earlier. Wetting out the floor, putting the glass down, rolling the air out of it. So I did that on both sides. You'll probably also notice the small bulkheads I've added into the outer sponsons. That's also Nidacore, built the same way as everything else. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video. You also notice that I trimmed the inside of the deck where it used to reach to the floor. And so that's pretty much it for this video. In the next video, we're going to get the boat turned upside down and start working on the bottom.